Today's story is also from the Old Testament, from the time before Daniel in the lion's den, which was last week. This is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Very hard to say, but kind of famous, so maybe you want to try to say it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And something we remember when we do these stories is, first off, scale doesn't matter. So here is my Shadrach. And in truth, just like Daniel last week, or Darius, I guess, last week, he would have trouble fitting in this castle here. He's too big. But in your imagination, just make it work. Either he's littler or the castle is bigger. The second thing to remember is that there's no face. So probably Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego all look different from one another. But you get to imagine how it is that they looked different from each other, as all people do. And the last thing that we want to remember is that with this style story, we always invite it to us with a song. Bible, Bible, tell your story, speak to us about God's glory. There's so much we need to know. Tell us how God loves us so. A very long time ago, there was a king, and his name was Nebuchadnezzar. He was indeed a very mighty king, powerful and a good fighter, and in some ways a good ruler. He certainly had a huge empire, and in fact he overtook Jerusalem and brought back some Jewish people to his own land of Babylon. For some reason, one day, he got it into his head that he wanted to build a statue. Nobody knows what that golden statue was of. Maybe it was of him. Maybe it was of his father. Maybe it was of Jupiter, a god from somewhere else. Nobody really knows. But what we do know is when he started building, he didn't stop. This was a big statue. Bigger and bigger and bigger it got, and it was gold, so very pricey here. And it was 90 feet tall, that's like 10 stories, and 9 feet wide, so kind of a hippie little statue. Anyway, there it was, and it rose out in the desert beyond his palace, really. Some days when the weather wasn't quite right, in fact, it sort of shimmered into the desert itself, and perhaps couldn't even be seen. But Nebuchadnezzar made rules on the day that he unveiled his glorious statue. Finally it was done, and to celebrate the finishing of this magnificent thing, he invited everyone and told them what the rules would be. When they heard the music, the timbrels, the harps, the bells, when they heard all the music, they were to fall down and worship the statue as though it were a god. Well, he tried it out on opening day, and everyone fell down and worshiped the statue like they were supposed to. Everyone, that is, except some people that the guards noticed and brought to the king. They brought forward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Brought our boys forward, and the king started yelling. We all know nothing's worse than a yelling king, and they certainly found that out this day. King Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just a little bit angry. He was mean and mad and angry as only a tyrant can be. And he said to the boys, I'm going to give you a second chance, but from now on, when the big band strikes up, you have to go on your knees, and you're supposed to worship the statue that I have made. And if you don't, you will be thrown into a fiery furnace, and no God can rescue you from that. The boys had an answer to King Nebuchadnezzar. They said, your threat means nothing to us. If you throw us in the fire, the God we serve will save us from that and anything else you decide to cook up to punish us with. But even if he doesn't, it wouldn't make a bit of difference because we will not worship your God. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar was angry, but he said, here, boys, this is your last and second chance. Play the music, band. And the band played, and the music played, and all of the other members of the kingdom went down on their knees, but not Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now the king was really mad, and he decided to call his guards and get the boys escorted to the fiery furnace. The guards came up. Over they went to the fiery furnace. Nebuchadnezzar was so angry. He said, guards, fire that furnace up. I want it 7 times hotter than it ever has been before. Oh my goodness, the guards fired it up. And when they fired it up, it got so hot that the guards themselves turned into fried up guards. Oh my goodness. Well, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego could not avoid their fate, and over they went to the furnace, escorted by some unfried guards, and the furnace was opened. And the boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were locked inside a fiery furnace 7 times hotter than anyone could ever stand. And then a little bit hotter than that. Oh, and the furnace was closed. And while they were in the furnace, they sang. If you wonder what they were singing, they were probably singing the song of creation, because these boys believed in their God. And while they were in there, another figure joined them, a figure sent by God to keep them safe. Well, Nebuchadnezzar was keeping an eye on the proceedings, and he said, hey, guards, how come there are 4 people in the fire? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out of the fiery furnace. And they did. And they were unharmed. Completely. Their eyebrows weren't even singed. If there was any chocolate in their pockets, it didn't even melt. Out they came, perfectly unharmed. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And Nebuchadnezzar said, your God is the greatest of all, for he has saved you. And from now on, the people of my kingdom will worship your God. What's the takeaway from our story today? Well, everybody has some times when they feel like they're in the fiery furnace with troubles or challenges or trials or things that aren't going right. But like Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, what we have to remember is that we're never alone. Sometimes God sends angels to be with us, but always God is there beside us. Amen. Bible, Bible, Tell your story, speak to us about God's glory. There's so much we need to know. Tell us how God loves us, even the little hound dogs. So